Hi, we're going to get started now. This session is Game On, How Gamification Drives Sales and Customer Engagement. I'm Samantha Ski. I'm with She Knows, and my amazing panelists are going to take you guys on a little tour through the latest and greatest in gamification. Now, for the purpose of sort of level setting, we put up our favorite source, Wikipedia's most recent definition of gamification. But you'll see for the purpose of this conversation, we're sort of melding the idea of applying gaming dynamics to an activity that is not traditionally considered to be a game as sort of the core aspect of gamification that we're addressing for the purpose of driving incremental consumer engagement. But we're also, from electronic arts, going to get to look at in-game advertising as a mechanism to drive incremental engagement sort of above and beyond what other typical formats can offer. So you'll see that we're morphing the more, I guess, not traditional, but the more typical definition of gamification, again, applying gaming dynamics to that which is not typically defined as a game, together with immersive gaming experiences that integrate brands and advertising. Both result in increased consumer engagement when done properly. Okay. So that's what we're doing. Okay, so gamification in general, just to, again, get us off on the right foot, leverages several sort of basic human impulses or interests, as listed here, but the desire to compete, to perform, to achieve, derive social status among a community, to express oneself, to share. Gamification takes all of those human impulses and leverages them to drive incremental participation, engagement, increased sort of depth of consumer adoption. And that is why it's so very popular right now. You can also see gamification used to drive things that are less about brand marketing and more about consumer behavior change. Or in this case, the example here, Quato Studios is driving education through games. Now, this is where it becomes kind of awesomely muddy in that you have games whose primary function are to teach kids something. In the case of Quato Studios, to teach kids how to code. Where you're really morphing the game experience with a separate outcome that is not necessarily simply to entertain or enjoy, but to teach a specific skill. And there's quite a lot of this kind of activity right now in the marketplace of educational technology. And I think the reason that is not too surprising that we're seeing gaming and education or gaming and branding morph and merge is that we're all looking for this sort of intense moment of fear or total immersion in a subject matter, and that is what that this is taken from an outtake of some students who are learning to code through Quato Games, through a Hakitsu game, which basically is incredibly fun, incredibly competitive, incredibly rough, but ultimately the kid emerges from the game after playing for a certain amount of episodes, learning the fundamentals, understanding the fundamentals of code. So it's kind of a neat example and something we're seeing more and more with the New York City Department of Education, together with Gates Foundation and MacArthur, launching schools that focus on gamified techniques. We're seeing a lot of this, so it's pretty cool. And ultimately, the outcome, whether we're focused on ed tech or on branding, the outcome is that we're sort of all seeking the holy grail of consumer or user or student engagement. The idea that that engagement has become something of a commodity and that it can be driven more aggressively through these techniques. There is, and again, listed some of the outcomes. Engagements become so commonplace that it doesn't really mean anything to many of us, but the idea that deeper engagement can be created over time and used as a mechanism to drive brand preference, brand loyalty, propagation, all of these hallmarks of a strong marketing campaign. So we're going to see some of those examples from these amazing panelists who are all very experienced and sort of have great pros and cons, good stories, bad stories around this approach. So the biggest learnings we'll hope to share with you guys is how you calibrate a gamified marketing program. So calibration is critical because you're constantly balancing a combination of rewards, activities, targeting, And for the sake of just paraphrasing, kind of the fame, fortune, and fun that you're offering a user in exchange for their attention. This is something recently I spent a couple of years working on a gamified experience, endeavoring to teach people about sustainability and teach people how to recycle properly. That's a pretty big audacious endeavor. And what we found was that the greater the task, or the more significant the ask we made of our users, the more significant the reward had to be. Now, in rewards, we're talking again about the combination of fame, fortune, and fun, with fame as a monetary reward, fortune as a monetary reward, fame as a status-centric reward, and fun as the immersion or escape that can come from gaming. And again, we found that if we were asking people simply to increase their eco IQ and learn something, that we didn't have to raise our reward benchmark too high. If, however, we were asking them to change the way they're recycling PET and plastic 5, we had to give a pretty significant reward, and we had to teach the lesson over and over and over again in order to ensure that it sinks in. And we didn't always succeed. So it's fun trying, though. So our next speaker is Aaron, and Aaron's going to share with you some really amazing stories from Electronic Arts. So, boom, here we go.
Take it away. Cool. We're going to start with a little video here. This is seemingly egregious brand exposure for EA, but it's actually tying into the overall story we're going to tell here. If we can get this rolling. Sound? So Real Racing is a completely free experience on mobile and tablet devices, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how that's changing consumer behavior within games. My name is Aaron Lassel. I'm the Senior Director of North American Sales and Brand Partnerships for EA. I work for a division called Global Media Solutions, and we do everything brand-centric in terms of bringing brands to life in and around our intellectual property. And we'll show you some examples of what that means. Just a quick overview of what the games industry is looking like. Combined, YouTube and Facebook on a daily basis don't garner as much consumer engagement as games as a medium. Over 1 billion hours spent daily on games worldwide, and there are upwards of 1.5 to 1.6 billion gamers in the world. How many people are gaming here in this audience today? Okay, I have a few more stats that might prove some of you to be withholding information here. It's a very crowded landscape. This is what we see as a game publisher. We see a lot of devices. We see consumers that have a lot of opportunities to engage with those devices across any array of activities. And they demand more access. They demand 24/7 real-time access to their favorite content. So the challenge as a game developer is, how do we bring them that access? They can't always be on their Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3. They have to have access on their iPad, iPhone, Android device, Microsoft Windows device, as well as online gameplay via the web. And so we really see everything device-wise as a platform. The average age of a gamer today is 30 years old. This is the US Census that you're seeing here. And demographically, breaking down gaming consumption and the US Census, we're almost on par. 72% of Americans are playing games. And that's what I said. Some of the people in this room may be withholding information. It's about a 50-50 split between male-female. And we're seeing increasing amounts of game consumption on free-to-play game devices, such as the iPad, such as online, primarily within that 25-plus female set. And we're doing so through the power of IP. We have brands that appeal to everybody. If you're 18 to 34 male and you love your console experiences and you love competing against your friends, you're probably into something like Battlefield or Madden if you live in the US. But if you're a 25-plus female, you're probably into easy to pick up, hard to put down game fare like Bejeweled, like Plants vs. Zombies, things that are usually 2.5 to 4 minutes in length. And you can play them waiting in the line. If you don't finish your experience, it's not the end of the world. It's just a really fun experience. It's a game. So this notion of playing anywhere at any time has really proliferated the world of gaming. Right now, if I'm a Sims player, which is our largest game, actually the second largest game in the history of gaming, I can play anytime I want. I still have that dedicated experience at night where I sit down with my console or my PC to play the full retail version of the product, which is 2 to 3 hours at times. That's really a dedicated viewing experience, no different than going to a movie. But during the course of my day, I can engage my favorite game franchises anywhere I want, at any time I want. So it's that 24/7, 365 access. I can play The Sims on my phone, on my Facebook account, or free to play online. And that's really important. Ultimately, for the games business, not just EA, it's all about this extension into mobile and tablet experiences, because gaming really dominates on the mobile platform. At any given day, consumers will spend 14 minutes on average on their phone and 25 minutes playing games. This was a recent report done by Arbitron. Further to that, when consumers are spending time in-app, 40% of all engagement time spent with apps is spent playing games on a mobile device. That number boosts all the way up to 70% nearly on tablets. So game consumption is the predominant behavior for consumers on these devices. From a monetary perspective, gaming absolutely dominates mobile. Last year, games monetization was a $9 billion business on mobile and tablet. Games represented 65% of that business, forecasted to grow to $18 billion by 2016. It's the fastest growing segment in games, both from a consumer basis, consumer engagement, consumer behavior, as well as revenue. So that brings us back to Real Racing. Really interesting phenomenon in the game space. Real Racing 2 was a $6 app on tablets. Real Racing 3, which we just released last month, was free to play. So the number of consumers that are now engaged in the game went from single-digit millions all the way up into tens of millions within the first 3 weeks of the game being live. And that's because it's completely free. Once consumers are in the funnel, they can choose how to engage their way through the experience. Just within the first week alone, it hit number 1 on the app stores. There were 25 million races completed each day on average. Massive, massive engagement time. 14 million hours were spent in that first 7-day period. And these stats are obviously 3 weeks out of date. We now have well over 50 million people that have downloaded the game. Once you're in the gameplay experience as a consumer, you can choose to grind your way through the experience by winning races, all with the aspirations of acquiring the car that you covet. Maybe it's that Bugatti, the Lamborghini. Or you can immediately buy those products with real-world currency. And that's what we call freemium experiences. Free to the consumer up front. They can choose how to engage over time. They don't have to pay anything. But should they choose to pay, they'll immediately have available to them greater products. So the entire aspiration of the experience from a consumer's perspective is attainment of more gold, which they can get by winning races or buying more, or engaging a brand advertiser. In this case, G.I. Joe is offering the consumer something of value that the game publisher is going to basically broker an introduction to a consumer that covets more content to make their gameplay experience different, better, or in some way enhanced from that of their friends. So this is an engagement ad. You see the offer at the top right hand of the screen. G.I. Joe is offering the consumer free money for free in-game virtual currency for engaging a 30-second video spot. Consumer watches the spot. At the end of the spot, they've been rewarded 1 gold. Oftentimes it's potluck. Could be 1 gold, could be 10 gold. They don't know until they complete the video. And the engagement rates are through the charts. They're completely user-directed opt-in, and consumers are clamoring for this increased access to content that they covet within their experience. In terms of results, results are typically through the roof. They're outpacing any other media format, digital TV, et cetera. 88% sponsorship awareness was driven from a recent campaign. Again, completely user-directed opt-in. These aren't in any way interstitial advertising or intrusive advertising placements. They're completely user-directed. Consumers are raising their hand saying, I want to engage the brand because they're going to give me something of value to my experience. In this case, almost a 50% increase in purchase intent. Once that's combined, that engagement mechanism is combined with in-game display, we see results that are even higher, 16% higher in top box brand metrics lift for consumers that were exposed both to in-game display served via our tech as well as engagement ads. So you're really seeing consumer recall through the roof when you combine those two ad formats. We're also doing a great deal of what we consider to be value exchange placements at the retail channel. So Dr. Pepper, big brand, every square inch of retail footprint that they get at Walmart, at Target, equates to incrementally more sales lift. So what you're seeing here is an EA under the cap program where Dr. Pepper consumers are rewarded with additional exclusive game content just for buying a $2 soda. Anecdotally, some consumers that didn't have access to this content outside of the US, let's say Australia, were going on to eBay and buying and selling these used bottle caps for as high as $24 just to gain access to the additional exclusive game content that they covet. Just goes to show how important this game content is for consumers. And the results, again, of this campaign were fantastic. 94% of consumers chose to interact with the Dr. Pepper content. Again, user-directed. They're raising their hand saying, I want what that brand has to give me. In some cases, it was content worth $5 or even $10 just in exchange for a $2 purchase. 32% of the people told their friend about the Dr. Pepper content, and their friends were obviously buying because Dr. Pepper really saw a nice sales lift, and it's an ongoing partnership. Most importantly, players love brands in-game. It's the most important stat that we live by. Typically, we'll see anywhere between 70 and 85% of our gamers clamoring for more content brought to them by brands. Some consumers don't want to pay. They'd rather grind their way through the experience. They're happy to engage a brand in exchange for that virtual content that they covet. Even paying players still understand the value that the brands are bringing to them, either in virtual currency or exclusive virtual content in many cases, sometimes branded, sometimes endemic to their game environment. 83% of players stated the brand in a recent campaign was a good fit within The Sims, which is a life simulator, kind of a mirror to real life. So it makes sense for brands to play in that experience. But really, brands can play in any game experience. All games have microeconomies, and all brands can bring consumers additional game content that they covet. So that's it. Thank you. Eric, would you like to come up?
Okay, here's Eric Lundberg from Native X for a different take on gamification.
Hello, I'm Eric Lundberg, the General Manager for Native X. We focus on helping brands and games in the mobile space. So I'm going to show you a few gamification examples we put together here. Just got to turn the screen. There are only 2 mics, so I was the guy who did that. So really some key best practices here. Really important to provide consumers with good value, things they really enjoy. I think the Dr. Pepper example was an excellent one. Make sure it's a good fit with your brand and product. And also we're seeing a lot of cross-promotion. So it used to be people would only do mobile or people would only do online. We're seeing more and more online, mobile, in-store cross-promotions. So a couple examples here. One is for Buffalo Wild Wings. It's a restaurant chain with over 900 locations in 49 states. It's someplace you can go to have a beer, some great appetizers, watch sports on TV. They recently did a promotion for the NCAA men's basketball tournament. So they actually had this take over the whole homepage of their website here. You could click and play now. You could actually download the mobile app. You could take a look at the leaderboard, see how you're doing on the high scores. You could fill out the tournament bracket for the NCAA. And then they had a fun online game here you could play, similar on mobile. And there was a Coca-Cola Zero branded basketball. Really immersive experience. And then as they kind of say here, once you get worked up playing your game, come on in for some drinks and apps. So it was a nice tie-in with the brand, In the upper corner here, you can actually type in your zip code or your city and find the restaurant nearest you. So the next one actually was for McDonald's Fishy Fishy, and we're going to try to play a video streaming via YouTube here.
Wow, these are good.
Fishy, fishy. Fish, fish, McFight, McFight. Fish, fish, McFight, McFight. Fish, fish, McFight, McFight. Fishy, fishy.
Fish mix bites are succulent and breaded to perfection. So take a trip to Mickey D's and get your service.
Get hooked on McDonald's new Fish McBites. Pop them with tangy tartar or spicy buffalo sauce. Catch them while you can. More
Fishy, fishy.
to love.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
So here we actually had a TV commercial driving people to a branded mobile app. It wasn't publicly released, but there was a lot of press written about it. It looked like this was actually a reskin of a very popular game that had been around for 2 or 3 years called Mouth Off. So super cool app on Android and on iOS. You actually can choose the fish mouth you want. You can play music from the song or hold it up and kind of talk through it. You can also click for more product information then about the product. You know, a number of other trends we've really seen going on, most of which we were under NDA, so I couldn't show screenshots through, but wanted to talk about. We actually have not only seen reskins of existing popular games, we've seen some very innovative marketers actually doing custom games from scratch with their brands built in. We saw from EA how hungry consumers are for virtual currency in the freemium model. The top freemium mobile games actually make $1 million a day in revenue from people buying virtual currency. And there's millions of users, daily active users, every day playing those games and clamoring for the virtual currency. So we're seeing brands getting involved with videos, as we saw, and we've actually beginning to see brands actually saying, hey, click, register, go in store and make a purchase, and then come back and get free virtual currency in your game. We also are seeing more and more in-store, like we saw with the Dr. Pepper example, people driving from in-store back to games. Also check-ins, you know, when you're at the store. Another really emerging trend is geolocation. So one thing that's extremely popular and extremely important for mobile, and it's just the beginning now, you can actually micro-target. So you can micro-target a consumer when they're walking by your brick-and-mortar store. Really just scratching the surface here with gamification. It's got incredible results through the roof for brands, and onward and upward from here. Thank you.
So next up is Projol from Sponsor Pay.
So it's been two very erudite perspectives on gamification, and hopefully this will be a third. So we regard gamification as being very similar to the concept of engagement. And in fact, in this context, gamification is almost an extension of an engagement in a sense. So if you look at gamification as being using gaming dynamics to influence user behavior, and then regard engagement as being, you know, innovative ways to attract consumer attention, then the two are very closely tied. And the goal behind gamification essentially is to build more than just that ad placement, right? It's to build more of a lingering relationship between the customer and the product or the brand. That's what you want to achieve. If you just wanted to place an ad, you could do that in a heartbeat. What you want to achieve with gamification is that larger, that longer, that stronger relationship. And from what we've seen, this works best when the business objectives, the brand objectives, the campaign goals tie very closely with what the user, the player, the consumer wants or hopes to achieve. And how does that work? So this is a very simple example of a campaign from Domino's. It's a video of a Domino's pizza commercial followed by a big green button that allows the user for a one-click purchase of a pizza. Now, this doesn't seem very interesting just at the outset, but we ran this campaign between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning to gamers who were engaged in games. At some point,
they clicked on a Domino's ad, they saw the video of this incredible pizza artwork, they got hungry, they bought pizza. It's very simple. 33%, 1 in 3 people actually went on to buy pizza. That's the kind of engagement you wouldn't get anywhere else. Those are the kind of results you probably wouldn't find anywhere else either. So gamification, manifests itself in various ways. And we think it has 3 essential pillars. The first being that the user needs to initiate the engagement him or herself. Because unless it's opt-in, it's not really, it's not self-motivated. And then automatically the interaction is compromised. The second, of course, is the actual interaction, the branding, the engagement. It needs to be high quality. There needs to be enough effort in there that the user does feel like the brand is making an effort and immerses himself or herself in the brand. And the third is the value exchange mechanism, which some people have spoken about here and a lot of people are talking about in the market today, and that also manifests itself in various ways. But the essential component of that is that the user must feel rewarded. And that brings me to the gamification mechanisms that you would employ if you were to run some form of gamification in your campaigns. For example, it's the first being the self-initiation, and that's almost fundamental to the process. And the reward at the other end, of course, is fundamental, but also everything else around self-expression, allowing the user to interact. The competition, so allowing the user to feel like he or she has a leg up on the others. And of course, the instant gratification. This is a generation that wants its reward now. And the easiest way to provide that reward is in a virtual form. So what can you actually achieve with gamification? You can do everything around the more basic areas of likes, shares, the whole social engagement. For some, that's basic. For others, that might be the holy grail. For others, you can achieve activity on Facebook or move on to, say, other platforms like YouTube and Pinterest and such. And then, of course, moving into the domain of feedback, so polls, surveying, that's very interactive. If you have artwork and you ask the user to provide feedback on the creatives and the artwork, that works quite well, especially with movie studios. When they want to pre-release a trailer, for example, they can showcase it to a limited audience and get some feedback. And then, of course, the whole concept of driving sales. And this works, right? All the data shows that gamification moves to enhance all forms of activity and engagement with users, whether that's simple commenting on Facebook and such, or it's actual sharing of content, or even more involved activity. It's anything from 13 to 68% higher than simply static campaigns. So, how can the gamification actually manifest itself in games or apps? It's a simple placement there. It's a Coke button. The user clicks it. He gets a skinned video. He or she interacts with it. On the surface, this is a fairly lightweight approach to gamification. But if you do it right, if the artwork is good, and if I may claim our expertise here, the artwork was fairly good. The Coke commercial in this case was excellent. It was an Olympic commercial. The share rate on this campaign was 72%. And then, of course, you have more intricate gamification techniques. So this is an example of a branded button from Atari. It's a campaign that Atari and Microsoft ran together. Video helped cement the brand perspective, so to speak, and was followed by this implementation of Super Breakout, which some of you might have played in its original form and some might have just heard anecdotes about. And that was interesting because users got to play a retro game that they would associate automatically with Atari. And then, of course, they went on to receive a reward in the game. Another implementation here would be this is just a simple advert game built around the movie. And people go on to watch the trailer, and they're engaged, and they spend more time in the ad unit. If you are, your goal is to drive sales. If you place the Fandango plugin, for example, after the trailer, more often than not, you can actually drive in-unit ad sales as well. And I'll share one final example from a fairly provocative brand, though the example is not as provocative as it probably could be. So Axe had a campaign around that involved an astronaut, a fireman, a chap in a suit, and a girl. And I don't know how they put it all together, but they did. And they came to us and said, how can we build engagement around this campaign? So this is just a simple, very simple advert game implemented in the course of a couple of days. And this was the campaign that we ran in France, which is why all the commentary is in French. And users just click around. I'm pretty bad at it, as you've probably realized. I'll get one eventually. And of course, then they go on to interact. So what does this achieve? Of course, the video, all Axe videos are provocative and they stay with you. But the moment you have an interactive format that sort of takes the video, extrapolates it into a format like this with actual interaction, it lingers even longer. And then if you reward the user for playing this game, then automatically the brand has this halo of being the sponsor of content, of virtual goods, and such. And that helps with the brand perception, the brand equity, and brand recall as well. So coming back to what can you achieve? It's everything from basic branding, and basic branding could be a variety of things, from just video to achieving more time, just longer time in front of the eyeballs, to maybe something social, and this again runs the gamut from Facebook to Twitter, shares and such. And then of course purchase intent, and this is important, and for many brands this is the holy grail. So they either want to, for automotive companies, they want to push test drives. For QSR companies, they want to drive coupons, or Domino's, for example, sales. For a lot of retail companies, they also do a lot of coupon distribution and e-commerce and such. And there are a variety of ways in which you can go about it. It all depends on what you're looking to achieve with your brand. A little bit about us. We're Berlin-based with offices in a lot of different cities. A lot of us spend a lot of time on aircrafts. In February, we were nominated as one of the 100 fastest growing companies in the world. And last year, we were the second fastest growing company in Europe. And part of it is our success, but part of it is also a reflection of the industry and gamification techniques and content, virtual content, games and such. And it's all a reflection of where things are headed, we think. Thank you.
Thanks. That was awesome. Thank you, guys, all of you. Just to summarize, we saw from Aaron sort of the degree to which gaming has overtaken our lives as one of our most engaged sort of platforms in media, and that it's certainly not just about guys or teenage boys. It's men, women, children. Everyone's gaming all the time. And then we saw from Eric some examples of advertisers beginning to employ or integrate their brands into the games that we consume. That's in many cases the most popular old school experiences. And then from Pro Joel, it was very cool to see how different aspects of the gaming dynamic are being pulled into marketing campaigns, in some case focused on incentivizing and providing rewards and sort of a new version of a loyalty program. In other cases, more about fun or immersive experiences that might not carry as much of an incentive. And and so I think this has been a great sort of 101. We'd love to take questions if anybody has any. And if they don't, I might ask some.